Manifesting Shadow and Bone season 2 to be about Six of Crows. I did it. I reread Crooked Kingdom because how could I not? And I'm here to talk about it. My sister said that she feels left out when she watches my videos because she hasn't read the books that I'm talking about. So just for you, Ginny, you're sleeping right now, but just for you, here's a non-spoiler section for it. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. Okay, starting from chapter 1. Chapter 1 starts off in Rhett Benko's point of view. She always like sets up the plot with like a random POV in the first chapter. This time it was Rhett Benko, and like he basically got like snatched by some of these like winged Grisha. Also, during this book, I low-key got spoiled for a lot of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I didn't read it before I read this book for the first time, which is why all these spoilers just went right over my head. Like, it always says like King Nikolai, and like Zilya's here, Jenya's here, and I'm like, it's okay, see no evil, hear no evil, we're good. Okay, chapter 2 is Wyland's point of view, which this is like the christening. He did not have a point of view in Six of Crows, but now we have his POV. We finally get to learn a lot about his backstory too. He's such an angel. What a cutie pie. Basically, they're all on a scheme to get Inej back, right? And they need to finesse this guy named like Smeet. What was his name? Cornelius. Him and Kaz end up having to break into Smeet's office in order to like get something, like get a location. And then Kaz is like, oh, I know where she is. Wyland didn't think he imagined the tension and the rasp with Kaz's voice. He'd heard it after the fight at the docks when Inej lay bleeding from Uman's knife. He'd heard it loud and clear atop the lighthouse as the clerk screamed for his life. I love me a Kaz go crazy when Inej gets hurt trope. That's all of our favorite tropes, like don't lie to me. We love to see it, even though it's like actually terrible. Reading it, I'm like, ooh, no, but also I'm like, they leave Smeet's house. In the process, they end up traumatizing Smeet's daughter. If you tell anyone, I'll slit your mother's throat and then your father's, and then I'll cut out the hearts of all these sweet slobbering hounds. Hannah's having such a rich childhood. Anyway, chapter 3, Matthias' chapter. Matthias, oh my gosh, why do I keep Kaz is talking about like he's spewing all this nonsense. We need the Kruga, we're gonna save Inej in order to get our money. Matthias was not fooled. Kaz always spoke logic, but that didn't mean he always told truth. The Wraith's life is worth more than that to all of us. And then Kaz is like, we get Inej, we get our money. It's as simple as that. Like a liar, he says that. A bold-faced lie. And then Wyland murmurs to Jesper, why won't he just say he wants her back? I said this before and I'll say it again. Kaz is literally just like a panicked schoolboy on the playground. Can't even get close enough to pull out her pigtail for attention. Oh my gosh, also we find out in this chapter that Muzzin from book 1, who took the place of Matthias in Hellgate, he died? Oh my gosh, this was foreshadowing. This is so upsetting. Moment of silence. Okay, chapter 4, Inej's chapter. Inej is not having a good time. Like, she got kidnapped by Van Eck. She's like, where are they? The question tore at some hastily stitched seam inside of her. Where is Kaz? She didn't want to look at the question too closely. Above everything else, Kaz was practical. Why would he come for her when he could walk away from Van Eck with the most valuable hostage in the world? It's not about the Kruga, Inej. Boy, this hits different. Oh. Besides, without Kaz, were any of them a match for Van Eck's ruthlessness and resources? I am, Inej told herself. I may not have Kaz's devious mind, but I'm a dangerous girl. And I'm like, period! Period, queen! Anyway, she fakes like a fall and then she ends up like taking like a shard of something and then is able to cut herself free. Then she crawls through the vents, but then she ends up getting finessed by Van Eck because he's there waiting for her and they tie her down to this table. Oh my gosh, I literally hate reading this part. So heartbreaking. Literally breaking. Because Van Eck is like, break her legs. I can't read this part. She says, oh, he'll never trade if you break me, she screamed, the words tearing loose from some deep place inside her, her voice raw and undefended. I'll be no use to him anymore. And it's like so painful because in her heart, she's like, it's true. And why would she not think that? Kaz has been nothing but rude. The king of mixed signals. Is it even a mixed signal? It's literally not. He's literally never shown anything to her. No, he has, Sunny. He has. Kaz had rescued her from that hopelessness and their lives had been a series of rescues ever since. A string of depths that they'll never tally as they saved each other again and again. Lying in the dark, she realized that for all her doubts, she'd believed he would rescue her once more, that he would put aside his greed and his demons and come for her. Now she wasn't so sure. It's just so heartbreaking to see Inej's hope in Kaz like break away during this time. Throughout the first book, all she does is put all of her faith and hope in him. She's always trying to paint him to be a better man than he actually is. She always sees the best in him and is always trying to convince him that he's not the big monster that he says that he is. You kind of see that wean throughout the first book, and it really comes to a culmination in this moment. All of her doubts about Kaz, they trump like the hope that she has, and in this moment she's like, last piece of hope that she had of like, maybe against all odds he will come and save me. She's like, he won't. I really am an investment. I can't. We're gonna move on to part 2, A Killing Wind. Chapter 5, Jesper's chapter. So the crew always disguise themselves in like the comedy brutes costumes. That was the group of people that they disguised as in the show too, right? Violet and Jesper are meeting Jesper's father. Jesper couldn't bear the thought of facing his father on his own. Inej would have understood. There was something steady in her that he knew would recognize and ease his own fears. Perfect is a strong word, and yes, Inej is perfect. Okay, chapter 6, Nina's chapter. Nina's still going through withdrawal from the parem. I'm gonna start a highlight reel of all of like Kaz could start his own Tumblr lines that he says. So here's the first one. Jesper's father, Colm, says, "You barely look old enough to graduate." And then Kaz says, "Ketterdam was my education." Hey, chapter 7, Inej's chapter. Van Eck could break every finger in both of Kaz's legs and he'd never say a word. But if his men stripped away Kaz's gloves, Inej still didn't understand why he needed them or why he'd fainted in the prison wagon on the way to the ice court. But she knew Kaz couldn't bear the touch of skin on skin. How much of this weakness could he hide? How quickly would Van Eck locate his vulnerability, exploit it? How long until Kaz came undone? She couldn't bear it. She was glad she didn't know where Kuwait was. She would break before Kaz did. Oh my gosh, can you imagine if both of them just like told each other all of the thoughts that they had each other every time they thought it? The world would implode. Nina's like during the heist, like all their meetings and stuff on the ship, Nina's just there, her heart run herself like, why this fool's heart beating quicker every time Inej is around? Why Inej's heart beating quicker every time Kaz is around? Anyway, so Van Eck thinks that he has it all figured out. He's like, we're gonna be here with our little armada and we're gonna get them. Like, we're gonna get them. And then Kaz says uno reverso, and he actually steals Van Eck's wife, Alice, who's like Wyland's age, but like, I'm not gonna get into that. Because he plans to do a trade. Chapter 8, Matthias' chapter. Wyland is like, oh Kaz, like please, like promise me that you're not gonna like hurt Alice and stuff. Like, she's just a pregnant girl. And he's like, Inej wouldn't want. In the space of a breath, Kaz had shoved Wyland against the tomb wall with his forearm, the crow head of his cane wedged beneath Wyland's jaw. Tell me my business again. He's literally unhinged. Like, Kaz is unhinged. Don't you dare speak her name. Anyway, Matthias has been having these like recurring dreams surrounded by ice and stuff, and he needs to save Nina, but he can't save her. Oh, she would die on the ice. She would die alone and it would be his fault. It really is like foreshadowing his character arc in the story. The proper way to read Crooked Kingdom is to just stop after chapter 37. This is like the foreshadowing because it's kind of like he can't let go all the horrible things that he's done in his past. Like all the hate that he's had in his heart for Grisha is catching up to him. He feels guilty about all the things that he's done. That's eventually like how he dies, right? Anyway, so they're on the bridge. They're about to do the trade with Van Eck. Matthias is like, he'd questioned many of his choices, but never his commitment to seeing her freed from Van Eck. He only wished she'd separate herself from Kaz Brecker. The girl deserved better. Then again, maybe Nina deserved better than Matthias. His self-awareness is kind of popping off here. A+ for self-awareness. Because he's so right. Everything that he said was right. They're absolutely correct. That's exactly. Anyway, chapter 9, Kaz's chapter. Kaz let his eyes pass over the guards once, briefly searching for Inej. He briefly looked at her. She was hooded, barely visible between the men Van Eck had brought, but he would have recognized that knife-edge posture anywhere. And if the temptation was there to crane his neck, to look closer, to make sure she was unharmed, he could acknowledge it, set it aside. He would not break his focus. Late at night, when the day's work was done, he'd lain awake, taking apart every moment of it. Again and again, Kaz thought of those few crucial seconds when he'd let his attention shift to Inej instead of keeping his eyes on Van Eck. It wasn't a mistake he could afford to make again. That boy had betrayed his weakness in a single glance, had ceded the war for the sake of a single battle, and put Inej, all of them, in danger. He was a wounded animal who needed to be put down, and Kaz had done it gladly. I can't. I have nothing to say. They're so perfect. They're perfect, Your Honor. That inner conflict, right? Of Kaz being like, Kaz caring so much for Inej, but then at the same time being like, this is a weakness Like, I need to stop this. But you can't stop. You can't stop. Kaz took in Inej's odd gait, the way she held her arms behind her back. They bound her hands and shackled her ankles. A reasonable precaution, he told himself. But he felt that flint inside him scraping against the hollow places, ready to ignite into rage. He felt that flint inside him? He could really kill Van Eyck right now. He would screw it all over again. I need to calm down. They haven't even talked to each other yet. Like, I'm gonna combust. He's giving Van Eyck Alice, and then Inej is like coming forward 3 feet. Inej's gaze was ready. She was thinner, her lips were chapped, but despite long days in captivity, the sun caught the dark gleam of her hair beneath her hood. 2 feet, and then she was before him. Oh my gosh, the way that my heart is like literally pattered. Oh, my heart is thumping so much right now. Your knives, he asked. They're packed inside my coat. They're finally together, like that's the first words that they say to each other, and they're perfect. Your knives, they're packed inside my coat. Name a better love poem than that. He shoved Inej's shoulders and she spun around, offering her wrist so he could slash through her bonds. He tossed the knife in the air, trusting her to catch it as he knelt to deal with her shackles. They reached their avatar state, like when they're with each other. Like, name a more dynamic duo. West Side Flower Boat, he said to Inej. That was all it took. She leapt onto the railing of the bridge and vanished over the side without a second guess. They're so perfect. The way that I would like give my left arm and left leg in order to see this scene adapted. They're on the gondola, like the boat, and they're passing like this pot of flowers, and he reaches into the pot of like these flowers to get the clothes that Matthias had stashed there. He swept the red cloak around Inej's shoulders in a rain of petals and blossoms as she continued to strap on her knives. She looked almost as startled as the flower seller. What? He asked as he tossed her a Mr. Crimson mask that matched his own. Those are my mother's favorite flowers. Good to know Van Eyck didn't cure you of your sentiment. Nice to be back, Kaz. Good to have you back, Wraith. I can't believe they just said I love you to each other. Oh my gosh, the amount of times that I reread that part. He saw Inej lift her mask and he pulled it back down over her face. He pulled her mask down over her face. Like, oh my gosh, the voluntary physical proximity that is happening on this bus right now is astronomical. All Kaz knew was he'd invested a lot of money and time into getting his Wraith back. He sure as hell wasn't going to lose her again. He touched Inez's shoulder briefly. That was all the signal they needed. He raced for the nearest alleyway. He didn't have to look to know she was beside him. Lee Bardugo needs to cool it with all of these, like, that was all the signal they needed. They didn't even need to say anything. You need to stop this. Like, it's too much. Chapter 11, Inej's chapter, they go into this like abandoned linen warehouse. This is like my favorite scene in the book. Name a more romantic spot than an abandoned warehouse. You can't! She watched him push himself up onto the stack of bolts across from her, resting his cane beside him. But she forced her eyes back to the window, away from the precision of his movements, the taut line of his jaw. Looking at Kaz felt dangerous in a way it hadn't before. The way that they're so whipped for each other. Inej just like thinking to herself, and then she realized, sorry, I need to get a drink of water. I need to like lower my body temperature. She realized Kaz was studying her and turned her gaze to his. Stop. Sunlight slanted through the windows, turning his eyes the color of strong tea. He'll never trade if you break me. She could feel the memory of the words as if they burned her throat in speaking. Kaz didn't look away when he said, did he hurt you? I can imagine Freddie Carter and Amita Suman killing this. It's too much. Kaz had been clear about his arrangement with her from the beginning. Inej was an investment. Inej was whole, unharmed. She bore no scars or trauma from her ordeal, but Van Eyck had taken something from her nonetheless. I'll be no use to him anymore. Words torn from some hidden place inside her, a truth she could not unknow. She let her fingers drift to the place where the mallet had brushed her leg, saw Kaz's eyes track the movement, stopped. She folded her hands in her lap, shook her head. No, he didn't hurt me. Kaz leaned back, his gaze dismantling her slowly. You can't say that kind of stuff to us. You can't just say that so much. I thought this was PG-13, like you can't just, this is not safe for work. He didn't believe her, but she could not bring herself to try and convince him of this lie. This is my favorite chapter in the whole book, not gonna lie. Oh my gosh, why am I like so exhausted? That took a lot out of me to like read that again. The sympathetic nervous system like really just took place right now. Breathing became more rapid, like my heart was pounding. The next morning, their little slumber party is over, sadly, and then they leave the warehouse and they meet up with the rest of them. Kaz unveils the fact that he used the money in order to buy shares of like sugar from like the silos, and his plan is to like have Wyland's Weevil eat away all of Van Eck's silos that he owns. It's Inej's job to get the Weevil into the silos, and she's basically going to be forced to like climb up these hella tall silos. Inej's chapter stressed me out so much. She has to use a tight wire to literally walk from silo to silo. Inej is the glue that holds this heist together. Literally, they would not be anywhere without Inej. Inej is like, a guffaw never performs with a net. And then Kaz is like, there's gonna be a net. The silence in the tomb was sudden and complete. Inej couldn't believe what she was hearing. I don't need a net. Kaz consulted his watch. Didn't ask. When Bae's like looking out for you. Oh my gosh, do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of that scene, like one of the very first scenes in Six of Crows, when he sends Inej to like deal with Rojak, that dealer. And he's like, how did it go with Rojak? And Inej is like, oh yeah, he's gone. And then Kaz is like, put up much of a fight. And Inej is like, nothing I couldn't handle. And Kaz is like, not what I asked. He's been whipped, like he's been a simp like since day one, you know what I mean? Chapter 12, Kaz's chapter. Kaz didn't hear Inej approach, he just knew when she was there, standing beside the broken columns of a white marble mausoleum. Her black hair shone in the moonlight, already tucked tidily away in a coil at her neck. Stop, not her hair shimmering in the moonlight. Felt them having a moment underneath the moonlight. Anyway, Inej is like, why the net, Kaz? And Kaz thinks to himself, yes, why the net? Why something that would complicate the assault he'd planned on the silos and leave them twice as open to exposure? I couldn't bear to watch you fall. The way that Kaz's chapters are like literally such a catfish, because of course instead of saying that he says, I just went to a lot of trouble to get my spider back. I didn't do it so you could crack your skull open the next day. He's such a catfish! On the outside, like everyone thinks that he's like dirty hands, like the bastard of the barrel, don't mess with him, like he's ruthless, bloodthirsty. But then on the inside, like he's literally just like a panicked soft boy, and he's like, I really don't want to watch you fall. Her hair is so shiny. Her laugh is so cute. And then Inej and Kaz come up on the perimeter of like one of these big like chapels and stuff. Inej basically makes Kaz climb up that entire thing just for her to be like, yeah, we're gonna get closer and you can't come. And she grabs a rope. She's gonna be ready to acrobat her way. He was going to kill her. You dragged me up here for nothing. Just think of all the time you'll have for prayer and quiet contemplation on the way down. She tricked him. The decent, honest, pious wraith had outsmarted him. He turned to look back at the long expansive roof he was going to have to traverse to get back to the boat. Curse you and all your saints, he said to no one at all. Then realized he was smiling. Oh, how does Lee do this to us? Like, truly Inej would be the only one to like be able to do that to Kaz, you know what I mean? And like get away with it and like leave him smiling. Anyway, so Inej comes back, feeds him the information. He's like, okay, great. This was them at their best, with nothing but the job between them, working together free of complication. He should leave it at that, but he needed to know. You said Van Eck didn't hurt you. Tell me the truth. Her braid had come uncoiled down her back. He imagined wrapping it around his hand, rubbing his thumb over the pattern of its plaits. And then what? He shoved the thought away. When they were only a few yards from the stone hull, Inej halted and watched the mist wreathing the branches. He was going to break my legs, she said. Smash them with a mallet so they'd never heal. Thoughts of moonlight and silken hair evaporated in a black bolt of fury. Kaz saw Inej tug on the sleeve of her left forearm where the menagerie tattoo had once been. He had the barest inkling of what she'd endured there, but he knew what it was to feel helpless, and Van Eck had managed to make her feel that way again. I'm up for the job, she said, her back still to him. Like conversations between angsty lovers where like they're not facing each other. So good, like they hit so different. She says, I didn't know if you would come. Kaz couldn't blame Van Eck for that. Kaz had built that doubt in her with every cold word and small cruelty. At least he knows that. We're your crew, Inej. We don't leave our own at the mercy of merch scum. It wasn't the answer he wanted to give, it wasn't the answer she wanted. When she turned to him, her eyes were bright with anger. He was going to break my legs. Would you have come for me then, Kaz, when I couldn't scale a wall or walk a tightrope? When I wasn't the wraith anymore? Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Dirty hands would not. The boy who could get them through this, get their money, keep them alive, would do her the courtesy of putting her out of her misery, then cut his losses and move on. And then he says, I would come for you. And when he saw the wary look she shot him, he said it again. I would come for you, and if I couldn't walk, I'd crawl to you. And no matter how broken we are, we'd fight our way out together, knives drawn, pistols blazing, because that's what we do. We never stop fighting. This is gonna be my wedding vow. Kaz held her gaze, saw the moon reflected their twin sides of light. She was right to be cautious, even of him, especially of him. Cautious was how you survived. Stop. You can't talk about Kaz and Inej holding their gaze to each other, okay? You can't do that to me. Oh, sorry, I can't. I need to grab a snack.